computer. Welcome all to the Harwich Zoning Board of Appeals meeting this Wednesday, June 24th, 2020. And I have to read this statement. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Town of Harwich Board of Appeals on June 24, 2020 at 7 p.m. is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in this order. The meeting agenda was posted. If anybody is on here that can hear and can't see, you can go to our Board of Appeals website on the Town of Harwich website and pick off the agenda, and it will have instructions on how to connect to us via computer. Okay, if everyone that's not speaking at the moment can themselves on mute, it will be great. Block out the background noise. When I ask someone to speak, unmute yourself, address the meeting, and state please your name, address, the reason for your participation, and you're supposed to do it both at the beginning and the end of the statement. As far as I'm concerned, it's fine if you just do it at the beginning. Okay, we'll start by asking the members of the board to identify themselves, please. I'm Dave Ryer, Chairman.
Jim Hilliard, member.
Brian Sullivan.
Alexander Donahue, member.
Brian?
Brian Sullivan, alternate member.
Amy?
James Armstrong, member.
And Chris Murphy?
Chris Murphy, alternate member.
Okay, thank you all. Okay.
Secretary.
And Shayla, our secretary, where is she? She's. Oh, there you are. Okay. Sorry, your name isn't there. For some reason.
I'm the town.
The bottom.
Town of Harwich.
Green is Town of Harwich. Okay. Okay, I will call the cases. Our clerk, Mr. Hilliard, can't get the descriptions. Case 2020-18. Andrew Hall, successor trustee of the Emulus Hall Realty Trust, through his agent, attorney Andrew Singer, has applied for a variance from the provisions of section 325-9 and table 1 of the zoning bylaw in order to redevelop a previously disturbed and commercially used portion of property located in 2 zoning districts in connection with a seasonal miniature golf course. The application is pursuant to the Code of the Town of Harwich, Section 325-52 in Table 1, Use Regulations, as set forth in MGL Chapter 40A, Section 10. The property is located at 346 Route 28 in 0 Sisson Road, Map 21, parcels N2-0 and N1-0 in the CH1 and RM zoning districts. I just need to make 2 disclosures before we go. I said this at the last hearing. I do know and work with, as a volunteer, she's paid, but I'm a volunteer, Meals on Wheels. She's a resident of the condos up above the applicant's property. And also, I just learned that applicant OSEV owns S&E companies. S&E is my irrigation company that I use to deal with my irrigation issues. My contacts with these people are, I think, fairly minimal and certainly won't object my ability to objectively make a determination on this case. And Attorney Singer, I'll just identify who we're going to have voting on the case. It'll be me, Mr. Donahue, Mr. Armstrong, Mr. Hilliard, Those are our 4 regular members and Mr. Murphy, one of our alternates. And with that, Attorney Singer, if you would like to present your case, please.
Thank you. Good evening, and for the record, my name is Andrew Singer. I am an attorney in Dennisport here on behalf of the applicant. With us listening and some of coming on the screen is Mr. Osef, one of the applicants, as well as Dan Croto, who is the project engineer, and Shannon Goheen, who is the landscape architect. I will be presenting tonight, and then Shannon will be discussing the landscaping plan. We will all be available for questions. It is our hope that we're going to be able to share a screen with you later. Mr. Osef did some drone imagery above the property, so you can see the buffer to the condominiums and the other properties. So hopefully that will be able to do that. What I would like to just introduce to you as we start is that the materials that you have in front of you, you do have a number of plans, including an aerial overlay. And I believe, and I'm not sure if this will come up as well, this is the aerial overlay I'm referring to, and that does show the revised proposal that we have before you. You also have the summary of reasoning that I had submitted, plus at least 3, possibly 4 letters of support, and a project benefits list that we had given to you. I mentioned those so that if you have questions as we're going through the presentation, you can refer to any of those materials. We were before you not too long ago with a request to do something similar on this property. It was to redevelop a portion of the split zone property to have 2 18-hole miniature golf courses for seasonal use. At the last meeting, and some of you were there and some of you were not, we ultimately did withdraw without prejudice when there were 3 members in favor of the proposal, and there had been 10 or 11 conditions that we had been discussing, but ultimately 2 of the members had concerns. And so we withdrew so that we could regroup and come back to you to try to address those concerns. This property, as you can see on the aerial, because it's in yellow, but certainly on any of the plans, is split zoned. And the frontmost part of the property, which has the antique center and Bud's go-karts, is in the commercial zone, and a portion of the land in the back, which is for several decades been used for industrial, commercial use, storage, soils and other things, is in the back of the property. And you've driven by there all many times. And when you look to the back of the property, it's where you see the trailers, there's a boat, there might be a truck. All of those are in the residential zone in the back. When we were here before you for the 2 golf course option, the amount of the residential zone which we were seeking permission to reuse by relief from this board was the existing amount of disturbed area in the residential zone is 48,750 square feet. We originally were proposing to reduce that down to 34,850 square feet, and that was when there were going to be 2 golf courses. If you look at the revised layout, which has been further shrunk and shifted to be right next to where Bud's go-karts is, excuse me, you will note that on the plan that there is now going to be only 17,700 square feet of the residential zone reused. So what we're proposing with this new application is a 64% reduction in the amount of land area within the residential zone that is already stripped, cleared, and denuded that will be reused. The rest will be revegetated, as Shannon will go on showing you in her plan later. On the split zoned lot, when you look at the entire part of the lot, commercial and residential zone, 67% of the proposed reuse is going to be in the commercial zone. The parking, the access, drainage, and we'll discuss that going forward. So what we are asking to do, and we'll discuss the variance criteria because that's obviously important, is to have that 33% of the golf course in, and it's not the whole golf course, but that part of it in the residential zone, which is, as I noted, the 64% reduction from what's out there today. If you look at the aerial, and I'm looking over at the plans, and I notice my head's on the screen is probably looking like I'm looking off screen, so I apologize for that. In the back triangle of this property, there is a very heavy, dense portion of vegetation. It's natural vegetation. When it's leafed out now in the summer, you can't even see through it. Sunlight doesn't even go through there. And we had submitted photographs to you, and the video will show that as well. That is being proposed to not be touched. And these are some photographs that Mr. Ossoff is showing you. That is the back property. So through that vegetation, here are the Beach Plum condominiums. Up the hill to the path, that's where it is. The outside storage that you see there on the property is all going to be removed. The parking area out the front of the property will be expanded and improved. And there's the buffer right there from where those trailers end to you can see the condominium buildings in the back. That is all going to stay. That is what we are proposing as part of the approval. It's not protected land now, it's just land that had not been previously cleared. The use itself requires a special permit in the commercial zone, and we'll be going for site plan review in the special permit if this board approves. We have been before Conservation Commission for the original project, and you do have a letter in your file. We will need to go back to them to substitute in the new plan just to show that it's been reduced, but what they were seeking, which is protection of the floodplain at the front of the property, is preserved, and that's exactly what they had been looking at before. This, as we said, is, the part that's in the residential zone requires relief from the board, and that's why we're here under section 32552, as well as Mass General Laws 4810. What we're going to describe and what we hope to show to you tonight is, as we discussed before, and for the additional members, is to demonstrate that there is a hardship in reusing the residential land for residential use. It is a hardship that can be approved by the board. It's the type of hardship that has been approved and upheld by the Massachusetts courts. I did submit some information to you, and I'll discuss that, which discusses that relief. For the variance, we need to demonstrate that there's a hardship based on the soil condition, shape, or topography of the land, and that the relief can be granted without detriment to the public good and without derogating from the purpose of the bylaw, which allows the variances that we're seeking. We believe that we meet all of those requirements, and we believe we meet them for a number of reasons. First, the wide open industrial and commercial use of the rear part of the land that's been there for many, many decades will be eliminated. And the boats, the trailers, the soil and earth removal materials, everything that's been on and off that site repeatedly will stop. Year-round use will stop. As I mentioned, there'll be a 64% decrease in the square footage of the residential zone that is used. There will be only one 18-hole golf course. The applicants did feel that for various reasons, having the second 18 holes would actually be beneficial, help with traffic and moving people through, but they appreciated what you said, and they are now proposing the one 18-hole golf course. We are seeking a use variance. However, dimensionally, everything on these plans complies. The setbacks, the coverages, everything is complying. We're not asking for any dimensional relief. As for access, curb cuts, driveways, parking, drainage, and the landscape buffers, they're all being improved. And one of the other big changes here, and this was something we heard from the neighbors and from the board, there is an existing curb cut on Harold Street. It's an unimproved dirt curb cut, but it's out to Harold Street in the commercial zone. The applicant is proposing to close that off and to vegetate along Harold Street. And you will see on the plan, a second curb cut has been proposed at the front of the property along Sisson Road. And these are all things that we will discuss with the planning board as part of site plan review as well, if you approve the use that we're requesting. Parking on the site will be shared with Bud's Go-Karts. They are very compatible uses. We are asking for a waiver for 8 parking spaces from the planning board, not from you, but from the planning board, to allow those spaces to be left grassed and green. They could be made pavement, or parking, but if you don't have to, the planning board is typically in the past, as long as you have the reserve area to be able to do the parking, they don't typically have a problem with leaving it as grass because, vegetated area is better than the pavement. Hours of operation, and this is it's on both the project benefits list I gave you as well as the summary of reasoning, so you can look at what I'm saying. It's in print. The applicant's proposing, similar to before, to time their use to Bud's Go-Karts. So in the season, which is June, July, and August, that would be 7 days per week, 10 to 10, weather permitting, obviously. And then in the off-season, shoulder season, they're asking for 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. any day, weather permitting. As you know, with seasonal uses, these are very limited in duration on Cape Cod. As for outdoor uses like Bud's and the miniature golf course, they're even more seasonal because if you have bad weather, no one's coming out. And so in order to make the businesses survive, they request in the shoulder season the ability to open whenever there's good weather. It's not a traffic issue in these shoulder seasons, and it's just the fact that they would be able to open and have some business during those times if the weather's good. They'd be shorter hours. They close at 7 at the latest. But again, weather dependent. So we're asking for those hours. That's what they're seeking. There was a question the last time about food service, and the only thing the applicant is requesting is to be able to sell bottled drinks and prepackaged snacks, nothing else. And so it would be very simple, but it'd be something, I think, not sure if it was Ms. Mueller or somebody at the last meeting asked about vending machines. I'm not sure how they would be sold there, but it would just be those types of products, just bottled drinks and prepackaged snacks. I mentioned before, but I think it's worth repeating, and we'll probably repeat it a few times, buffers. That extensive wooded buffer to the back that you saw on the drone image a few minutes ago, that is going to be retained in its existing natural condition. It's going to be it is and will remain a wonderful impervious buffer to the condominium owners. Ms. Goheen, when she goes through the landscape plan, will discuss what she is proposing on her plan to augment that closer in to the business itself. Getting to the variance criteria. The front of the property is in the wetlands floodplain area, and that is shown on the plan. And you're familiar with this area being within the floodplain from here all the way down to Route 28 and across. What the Conservation Commission liked about this layout, they liked it when it was even bigger, but I believe they'll still like it when it's smaller, is that the part of the property that could suffer destruction in the case of a flood is removed out of the floodplain. It's removed further back. It gets higher a little bit, but it's also further back and out of the floodplain. That's the golf course. Parking, which is flat, can stay in the floodplain. If it's bad weather and there's floods, there's not cars there, so you don't have damage. So from a wetlands, soils condition, and topographical features, allowing a portion of the miniature golf course to be within the residential zone preserves and enhances the environmental protection from stormwater flowage damage and the environment. That we submit is a very critical benefit and condition under 32552 and 48 Section 10. In addition to locating that part of the business that could be damaged out of the floodplain, because if you had a business, if you built a building in the commercial zone, then you'd have to deal with that if there were issues. In this case, you won't have to. And in addition, by enhancing the parking and the stormwater and the drainage, and if you've been out there, you know there's none in most of that property, then that will also be improving the environmental status and improving the benefit to the environment. When you're looking at the variance, in addition to looking at the soil conditions and topography, you look at historical usage, and this is a view from Harold Street of the buffer. Excuse me. You look at that commercial, the existing use that's there, that's being removed, that's a benefit. You look at the wetlands, floodplain issues in the front of the property, that's a benefit. You also then look at the residential zone itself. And if you take a look at the plan and look at the section that is in the residential zone, you will note that that part of the land is very odd shaped. The connection out to Harold Street right now is wooded. So in the residential zone, if you're going to be reusing that land for residential use, you'd have to clear it and put a driveway in. The proposed location of the golf course is, while partially in the residential zone, as close to the commercial zone in Bud's Go-Karts as you can get. And it's in that very cleared area at the far part of that picture. You can see the Bud's track. This property, because of its location, because of its historical development, because of its uses, does not lend itself to commercially or economically viable or practical or desirable residential use of the residential part of the land. It's bordered by the go-kart uses I noted. You've got the commercial activity on Route 28. You have a supermarket across the street. In the Massachusetts zoning manual, I'd like to read you, and I submitted this in my summary. There it is quoted, or I'm going to quote from it, which is, these are from the gentleman who wrote the chapter on this. Quote, hardship is not being reasonably able to use property for the purposes or in the manner allowed by the municipal zoning requirements due to circumstances particularly affecting the property. The conditions that establish hardship are diverse. And they go on to cite a number of court cases and explaining further that in variance situations, quote, substantial hardship, financial or otherwise, is found where the unique circumstances it is not economically feasible or likely that the locus would be developed in the future for a use permitted in the zoning ordinance or bylaw. And if you look at some of the holdings in the cases, and I believe, Mr. Chairman, you have, at least you have some of this language. Some of the holdings talk about, in some of the cases, one court found that other potential uses of the property were not economically feasible. Actually, several court cases found that. Another court case held, Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court held that conditions, quote, foreclosed residential use of the lot where it was triangular shaped, was bounded by two streets, was traversed by utility easements, and was in close proximity to a commercial use, was covered by peat, and was used as a dump by local residents. So there was a site, and I'm not saying that this property is identical because court cases are fact specific, but they looked at a site that was odd shaped, that was surrounded and very close and butted up to commercial uses that had been used for a use that was not desirable, and they upheld the grant of a variance for use. Another court held that development, they upheld the variance when they found that development in compliance with the zoning was not, quote, practical from a sound investment viewpoint, end quote. When you look at those court cases and you look at what the courts look at for upholding variances, I believe we fit into that squarely. This is a case where reusing that land for residential use is not economically viable or feasible, or even more importantly, desirable. You have, well, this use that we're proposing with the protections of the natural open land that's there will provide better protection and better buffering to the neighbors, to the out to Harold Street as well as to the back at Beach Plum condominiums, than residential use of the property if it was even doable, which is to be clearing it and putting in some type of a housing development, single family or multifamily. That was raised when we discussed it at the last meeting. Also, however, and this comes up in court cases, courts say that you're not entitled to do something to maximize your economic value. Well, in this case, we have a property owner, and the applicant is a lessee of the property owner. We have a property owner who is actually foregoing highest and best use because she wants a use on this property that continues the use that her late husband had, which is with Bud's Go-Karts, and which prevents more intense year-round commercial development of the front of the property. This is Sandra Hall. She did submit a letter, Mr. Chairman, to the town hall, but it may not have gotten your file yet because of town hall being closed and everything. I just wanted to, and she had sent something similar at the last hearing. I did want to read, excuse me, just a few sections from it because it goes to why the owner believes that this is also appropriate and why they're not seeking to maximize, they're seeking to do what they believe will be the best for the buffers, the neighbors, and the town. Quote, she writes, over the many years, Buddy and the family have rejected many lucrative offers for purchase or lease of the property, including yet another chain drugstore, big box stores, and plans for dense multi-unit housing, all of which are allowed uses, even without the variance we are currently seeking for the small center wedge of the property. And while the current proposal will bring us only a fraction of the considerable sums we have been offered over the years, we see this proposal as an opportunity to create an attractive seasonal asset to the town and a far better neighbor than those other uses would bring. Another section, quote, we do not want to be a nuisance to our neighbors. Our current plan does not involve removing the tree line buffer between our land and your homes. To the contrary, this plan will not only add more trees to the buffer, but will also create a pleasing seaside nautical atmosphere, complete with a host of native plantings, trees, and gardens, which we hope will become a year-round habitat to more of the birds and wildlife we all love. And last section, quote, we fully understand the concerns of the neighbors, but given the layout, lighting, and traffic plans, and the short season involved in the operation, I do not believe that the proposed miniature golf course will have any negative impact on the peaceful enjoyment of their homes. I would therefore respectfully request that the board members look favorably on the plans and grant the variances. Also, Mr. Chairman, I know the board members do have these. You have three letters in your three letters that did make it into your packet. Support. One is from George's Pizza House across the street. Another is from the Mad Minnow and Three Monkeys located on Main Street. And the third is from the Chamber of Commerce. All of them discussing the benefits of this type of seasonal use on this property, on this corner, as opposed to another more year-round standard commercial chain use. And so I'd ask you to be considering all of those, Ms. Hall's comments, as well as the three letters of support that you have as you discuss the project. As I mentioned last time, we had tried repeatedly to reach out to the Beach Plum condominium owners. We had been unfortunately unsuccessful in being able to talk with them. They did not want to talk with us, so that we've tried. What we are doing, we're still trying to, and we propose it in these plans, is to preserve the buffer that's there and to enhance it. And as you have with the letters of support, I think this is a use, particularly where you're stopping access from Harold Street, which you could have by right in the commercial zone, and you could even have it by right in the residential zone. We're proposing not to have that. We believe that the proposal will be in keeping and compatible with the neighborhood for all of those reasons. We believe the intensity of a seasonal use is much less than what you could have up front in the commercial zone. You could have year-round restaurants, retail stores, repair facilities, and marine uses. Those are all by right uses in the commercial zone. You have a shared use situation here. It's something that boards frequently like to see. We're having multiple compatible uses on the property so that someone coming to the go-karts can go to the golf course, go to the golf course and go to the go-karts. It reduces traffic out on the roads. It allows people to be on site longer, and it is mutually beneficial for both uses. Lighting is going to comply with the town requirements. There will be no off-site glare, even without all of the rising of the hill and the natural vegetation. All the lighting will comply with the proposal. There is a fence around the golf course. What I'm going to do now, if I can, Mr. Chairman, is turn it over to Ms. Goheen, because I think that's a nice segue into discussing her landscape plan that augments and enhances the natural buffer. Thank you. Shannon?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me? Okay, good. So you've got a plan in front of you, I believe, that shows the landscape design. And our main concern Yes, thank you. Good. Our main concern from the beginning has been screening. And this design has always been set up to screen the neighbors as best we can. And our main requirement was that the majority of this landscape be native. It didn't all have to be native, but we chose to make it 100% native. So we feel that that is better for the environment, it's better for the birds, as Mrs. Hall mentioned, better for critters. And early on, when I was able to speak to some folks from the Beach Plum condominiums, that was a request. It was an early request that somebody had about being able to continue to see her birds and creatures that she had become accustomed to. So I took that to heart and made it better. At the last meeting, one of you requested that we up the number of our white pines from 15 that I was proposing to, I think you said 25. We have bumped it up to 30. If you're familiar with white pine, it is one of the largest trees in the northern forest. It's a huge plant, and it's evergreen. 30 is a big number, and they will, in very, very short order, all be touching and make basically an impenetrable connection of evergreen. And that will all be in front of the buffer that we're not touching, as you can see on the plan. So there's no way that anyone is going to be able to see into this. It's just not possible with that many trees. In addition to that, I have some clusters of a native plant called viburnum, and a native tree called juniper, otherwise known as northern white cedar. These plants all offer various benefits to wildlife, and it's good to mix both deciduous and evergreen. So I have done that. The grass, which is, the open areas that is green, that's conservation grass. That's the kind of grass that the conservation commissions across the Cape want, because it was developed, it's a seed that was developed from native Cape Cod grasses. So it's our best option there. It makes for an open field. Open fields are good. There's not very many of them these days. And that brings in things like bluebirds, animals that like open fields. So we have thick woods here. We have open fields. We will have some water features. We have everything here that makes for an environment that birds and creatures will want anyway. It also screens the neighbors. There's a hedge across the, you see there's a hedge down there where there's some little cars drawn. That's a native hedge there. And that will offer a lovely scent, lovely bloom, grows to be about 8 feet tall. That'll be a lovely benefit in the summer. And that's essentially what I want to say about this. I feel that we have improved it on every level for everything, people, creatures, the environment, across the board. And I know that other places don't generally do this. It is basic grass that grows in and the basic trees. So this is really different. This is a benefit. This is unusual. And because I know the folks who will be at the helm, I know that will actually happen. It's not like we're trying to pull a fast one, which is what usually happens at these things. It will go through as presented on paper, and I will be in charge of it.
I have one question, if I can ask it.
Yes.
I love the white pines. They're great, but mine are being attacked by the pine borers. So I see evidence all over that a lot of the white pines are being attacked now. Is there any way to address that? So once you put these in, they're going to be preserved and not, you know, die because of the pine borers?
They don't usually die because of that. There's many pines around, and a lot of them aren't affected. They can be sprayed if that happens. That is the way to control them. Remember that where the pines are, at least part of the pines are, is an area that needs to be native. And you need complete screening, you need evergreen. You don't have very many options. So the biggest, best tree is pine, and pine borer does not concern me, knowing that we have ways to control that.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, just to add to that, one of the conditions you had discussed at the last hearing was a condition that any of the plants or trees that died would be replaced within 3 years, just to make sure that they took. And that would be just a follow-up to ensure viability.
Okay, thanks. Now, just the pine trees, I know, and well, a lot of the trees now, I think the oaks are getting attacked now. I don't know if there's an answer. There's all kinds of bad bugs out there killing our trees here on the Cape. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Attorney Singer.
No, I think, well, I will make one comment that as was stated, in addition to having Ms. Goheen monitor it, the applicant in this case is a landscape contractor. So he's also somebody who's heavily involved in that business. But I think that is our presentation. I see all 4 of us on the screen here. So we would be happy to answer questions from the board, and whichever one of us can address it, we'll do so.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Donahue, why don't we start with you?
All right. The proposal now with one golf course, in my opinion, fits more closely to the needs and usefulness of that area. I like to see the Chamber of Commerce has entered into this with a little bit of approval. There seems to be, in my opinion, where this is located, along 28, there are several amusement type businesses down there, and this would be compatible with which is currently on 28, and I think would actually enhance what is right now a rather unsightly lot on the upper portion, which has been used over the years for dirt, sand, and of course the boat, which is going to be removed. I like to see the white pine. I think I had mentioned that before, primarily because it's a larger tree and would provide more privacy for the Beach Plum condominium community, which has had some great concerns with regard to this. Beyond that, I don't have any further questions or statements.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hilliard.
Thank you. From the latest presentation in comparison to the last, I actually was leaning in the direction of approving the last presentation. As I look at the elevations of the site that is being discussed, and the elevations of where the residential abutters are, I find the residential abutters are at a much higher elevation, and also
Hey, we lost your audio, Jim. Jim?
Wasn't looking. He's saying how much he approves of the project.
I'm trying to call him to let him know he's doing his ring.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry, I don't know what happened. The phone stopped. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Dave.
Yeah, okay, I'm back.
You cannot hear Mr. Hilliard.
The phone just cut out. I don't know why.
We cannot hear Jim, and Jim's been speaking. Oh, we can't hear him.
Yeah, when we couldn't hear Jim, suddenly my phone went out. I don't know why. Now, Jim looks like he's gone.
Maybe he's dialing in.
All right, well, why don't we go on to Brian Sullivan then?
Well, after both presentations, the last time and today, I think all my questions have been answered. I think it's a good opportunity for the town. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Armstrong.
I don't have any questions. I think they've shown that they are willing to work with their neighbors and come to a conclusion.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Murphy.
A couple of questions, just to make sure I'm clear on this. The proposal is to convert only a portion of the property to residential, so to commercial. The portion of the property that will not be part of the golf course, that'll remain residential, is that right?
Well, there's no change in zoning here. What's residential remains residential, what's commercial remains commercial. The proposal is simply to allow a commercial use in part of the residential zone.
Right, so what is unbuilt then is still residential and homes could be built there in the future. Yep.
In theory, yeah, it would be permitted use, but.
Right. Yep.
What we are proposing, Mr. Murphy, is that in the part of the residential zone that is not going to be within the golf course, that the pre-existing non-conforming, non-protected, whatever you want to call it, uses that have been there for many, many decades will go away.
So you'd clean up the site with the landscaping that was proposed, right?
Yes.
Yeah, most of the area that's being put forth as a golf course in this design is really a pinched off portion of that residential property. So it's it'll be tough. It would be tough to put residences where that golf course is proposed. The remainder of the residential area could support it. So it looks like where you're putting that would be tough to build anyhow.
It is, you are correct. It is our belief based on everything we presented that using any of it for a large scale residential use is not economically viable. But you are correct. It's being pinched, to your words, down closest to the commercial zone by the go-kart track.
Right. I have no further questions.
Okay, thanks. Jim, do you want to try again? You dropped off there, as did I. Kim Hilliard? Jim, are you back? You're on mute. Well, you know what? I don't really have any questions. I think it was a great presentation, and I am happy that the applicant adopted a lot of the suggestions we had last time. So what I think I'll do, we'll give Mr. Hilliard a chance when he comes back, but in the meantime, we'll open it up for public comment.
Mr. Chairman?
Who's that, Attorney Reed?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. For your record, Attorney David Reed from Yarmouth, representing the Beach Plum condominiums of 14 Harold Street, the adjoining property to the east. I apologize to Mr. Singer and to the board for not having submitted any written presentation to you this evening before the start of the meeting. but I frankly wasn't even aware that this application had been filed until about 4 o'clock this afternoon. So we didn't have the opportunity to do that. That's not your fault, but the fact is I just wasn't aware of it and couldn't submit anything to you guys or to Mr. Singer ahead of time. I'd like to start, as I think we should, with the criteria for a variance rather than with the bottom line of whether you like the project or not. The requirement, of course, is that the applicant demonstrate that there is a substantial hardship to the property, the residentially zoned lot, based upon some special circumstances relating to its soil, shape, or topography. The only such condition that's been identified that I've heard is the floodplain area located along Route 28 in the commercially zoned portion of the property. But it's not enough, as I said to you before, to have something special about your property. It has to, in fact, be the cause of your hardship and your inability to conform to the zoning bylaw. The floodplain area is not currently preventing them from having a parking lot where they propose to have it. It's not preventing them from expanding and continuing that parking lot where they proposed to enlarge it. The floodplain area certainly is not preventing them from having the miniature golf area in the residential zone, because if that area was dry as a bone with no floodplain whatsoever, they still couldn't have a miniature golf course or other commercial use in the residential property. It simply is not the cause of their hardship. It is a condition that exists on the property, but it has nothing to do with the need for this variance. It's also interesting to note that there's nothing about the floodplain in the commercial area that prevents the residential portion from being developed for any other lawful use. There simply isn't any connection between that condition and what's proposed. The second part of the criteria is for you to decide whether granting this kind of relief would be detrimental to the neighborhood and or substantially derogate from the intent and purpose of the bylaw. And the purpose and the intent in this case is to zone this area for residential use, not for commercial use. A 17,700 square foot portion of that property being dedicated permanently to the commercial activity of a miniature golf course is completely inconsistent with the intent and purpose of the town meeting in drawing the residential line where they did, where you did. As to whether it's detrimental to the neighborhood, it certainly is what's proposed tonight, a lot better or a lot less detrimental than what was proposed before. And I can hear all of your comments to that effect, and that's obvious. Who would not conclude that? But that's a bit of a false comparison. To compare a request for an 18-hole miniature golf course to a 36-hole miniature golf course would be a proper comparison if the 36 existed or was entitled to exist, but it's not. The comparison should be whether the miniature golf course in commercial operation is more detrimental than a use that ought to be there. Now, Mr. Singer has read the eloquent letter from some of the ownership that they would prefer this to something like a national chain store or a mall or something else that could go in there. But those can't go on the residential portion by right. Those are only permitted in the commercial part. That's again, a false comparison. Those uses are not permitted any more than this is in the residential district. And to say that this is preferred instead of those is not a legitimate comparison to minimize the impact that this will have on the residential neighborhood. In terms of what's proposed for the site, I note that the site plan has a reference in it, a note in the middle of the miniature golf course layout to see Castle Golf detailed plan. I don't see that that was uploaded to the Acela site, so I don't know exactly what this is going to look like, and I guess you don't either, unless we assume that it's going to look like what was proposed before, and I guess it probably will. But that's not a nautical theme. Those are artificial buildings. This is rather garish and bright and loud and great for a miniature golf course. But I would ask you, you're familiar, I presume, with Pirates Cove in West Yarmouth, with the Skull Golf area in South Yarmouth or on Route 28, would you want either one of those in the property next to your house? I suspect not. I know my clients would not want those to be there, and they don't. I'm a little curious about the parking lot that's now proposed. When they were proposing 2 full miniature golf courses of 36 holes, they asked you to approve a site plan with 83 parking spaces. Now, with only half as much of a miniature golf course, they're still proposing 77 parking spaces. They've reduced it by only 6 by the elimination of half of what was proposed before. I'm not sure why that number is required. As we, I think, mentioned last time, the bylaw says that the parking demand is to be determined by the building commissioner. I've written to the building commissioner and asked how he determined what was needed. I think we asked last time the applicant how they determined what was needed, and I did not receive an answer. At least I didn't hear one. But whatever they calculate that to be, they're still proposing 77 parking spaces for this use. The applicant, again, makes repeated reference, and several of you have also mentioned the elimination of the use that's there now. There's not really a use there now. There's activity that's been there historically, but as far as I've been able to determine, there's no lawful use that's ever been made of that other lot. It's certainly not what's there now. The applicant is not applying to you for a special permit to eliminate or alter a lawfully pre-existing non-conforming use. It's just there, and it ought to be eliminated. But eliminating it is not something that should give the applicant a stepped-up basis or a bootstrap to justify a variance. Should I wait for the chairman to return?
Probably should.
Excuse me.
That's right, thank you. I was just saying that the elimination of the arguably unlawful and certainly not lawfully pre-existing use of the site is not a basis for justifying a variance for an entirely different use. Either use would be repugnant to the intention of the residential zone. This is not an insignificant encroachment, by the way, into the zone. The calculation which I made and which Mr. Singer made is it's approximately 17,700 square feet of the residential property that's being used for the commercial enterprise. The rest of it, admittedly, is passive, except for the septic system that's going to be out there, the soil absorption system. But it is still a significant encroachment. This is not just a slight overlapping of a commercial use into the residential zone. Mr. Singer quoted to you from the Massachusetts zoning manual about how if a lot can't be used for its intended use, that may, under some circumstances, be a justification for you to grant them some relief for a different use. What he didn't read to you is the following paragraph in that work that goes on to say that proximity to a zoning district line is not the basis for relief, that every zoning line has to be somewhere. And the fact that the last lot in the residential district may be less desirable than others for their intended use, they are still to be used for their intended zoned use. And the proximity to that line is not the basis for a variance. Because if it is, and you allow the commercial use to creep into that first residential lot, then doesn't that just extend the problem to the next residential lot? If the proximity to commercial activities makes a residential use undesirable where it is, then if you extend the commercial activities into the residential zone, you're imposing that same undesirable condition upon the next lot. And that's not what we're supposed to do. That's not the basis for a variance. I would respectfully suggest to you that this application whatever you may think of it in the abstract, is not a request for relief from a hardship. It is a request to try and take advantage of a business opportunity. And that's not what use variances are for. It's not what they're intended to be used for. They're intended to be sparingly granted, and only when there is a genuine hardship, an inability of the applicant to comply with the bylaw, not just an opportunity to get around it and take advantage of an opportunity. We would respectfully again ask you to deny this application. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Sorry, I just ran away there to turn off my grandfather clock because I noticed we're about to go to 8 and it's right down below me here and it would have drowned everything out. So I should have asked for time out. Sorry.
No problem. You didn't miss anything. We noticed you're leaving and we stopped.
I could actually hear you down there, but that's fine.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak to this petition?
Hi, my name's Carol Porter. My address is Beachfront Condominiums, 14 Harold Street, Harwichport. I know how to work the audio, but not the video, and I'm afraid if I try it, I'll knock myself out. So
No, we can hear you, Carol. That's fine.
All right, good. I just want to say a few things about this that Attorney Singer brought up. One was that we at Beachfront saw no reason to meet with Attorney Singer to discuss changing residential to commercial zone. Other than that, we would have been happy to meet with him, but that was the crux of this, and there was no sense in wasting people's time and money to meet. And no one approached us about a 12-hole golf course at all. And also, I keep hearing about, well, I hear about native plants, but that's different from a natural plant, a natural state. And that's what we have now. But I know there's no guarantee no matter what happens of that. But if this goes through, would the rest of that triangle stay in its natural state? Would that be stipulated, or does that mean that in the future they can come back and do something else with that area that they're now proposing as a buffer zone? Is that a guaranteed buffer zone, or is that just for now? That's my question.
Attorney Singer, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, I can answer that question, and then I would like to respond later when the public's done as well. But to answer that specific question, one of the conditions you discussed last time was that the landscape plan that we have submitted to you be a condition of approval. That plan shows the natural existing buffer and the proposed plantings. And so to answer Ms. Porter's question, yes, if this project is approved and ultimately built, the landscape plan will control, and that includes not cutting the triangle of the natural vegetation.
Does anyone know why we have this go-to-meeting thing up here? I don't know. Can anybody see it besides me?
I can.
Yes, I can.
I can see it, yeah.
Move it somehow.
I don't know why it's there.
Somebody hit share screen. So if you're looking at your go-to-meeting controls, just click on screen your share your screen. Just if that's green, click on it. It doesn't say whose screen is that. So everybody check their screens.
Green screen, okay.
There you go.
Somebody, it just went back.
I think it's Dave Fryer.
Hey.
It was off briefly.
David, I believe it's you. It shows that we're now viewing your screen.
No, not the camera, Dave. The one next to the camera to the left. It's the middle button. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Boy, do I hate this program.
This is a very different way to have public meetings.
But anyway, okay. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak to this application?
Yes, my name is Karen Jensen, and I'm a resident of 14 Harold Street. And I have major concerns with what has been proposed. I recently bought here, and I had no idea that this proposal was even in play. I probably would not have bought here had I known that. And I have to agree with what Attorney Reed said, that once you start encroaching on property that is zoned for residential, what is going to happen to the next lot as it comes up? I also believe that we're looking at, even though it's seasonal, it can grow and become all year round. The hours are concerned for me. At 10 o'clock at night is very late for some of us who live here. And so I am not in favor of the board approving. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the public? No, hearing no one.
Hi, yes, I would like to speak. My name is Tracy Stewart.
Okay.
And I was listening to Shannon speak about the plan and everything. Obviously, I'm the one closest to this, being a private home, not a condo, but considered a home as well. And across the street from me is Georgia Pizza owners. They're close to the property. But you were talking about doing pine trees. What about Leland cypresses that are wide and evergreen and grow very, very tall, actually? And I've actually planted 12 of them in my yard. And I also had that pine borer beetle attack a couple of my pine trees in my yard, which is right adjacent to the golf course, which I have sprayed. So, and it is growing, it's flourishing right now. So I just had a concern about what other trees that you would plant beside the pine.
The Leland cypress is not native.
Okay.
And we have that native limitation. And unless you convince the Conservation Commission to let us see that, we can't do it. Your choices are pines or cedars, and cedars are not going to do the job. Pines are the only ones to do it. So that's what we have to do.
Okay. And then also for lighting, how tall the light post is going to be and direction of the lighting?
I will answer that question. The proposed height of the lights is 12 feet, pretty standard. I will share the screen right now, showing the lighting plan. If you could see, everybody can see that or not yet?
We cannot.
Okay, yeah, right now. It's coming up.
And Suave, if I might, just as you start, this for the board in response to a comment from Attorney Reed, this is in your packet. This is the golf course layout, which he's going to be discussing for lighting. Mm-hmm. Just so you know.
Okay, so you can see the light. You can see these circles right? Everybody follow that? Can everybody see that plan?
Yes.
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 Okay, yes. So those are so-called dark sky lights. There is no light pollution beyond that line. And literally, they're just spotlights. They don't really go beyond the circles that are outlined. They're very, very standard for commercial use, especially nowadays with residential concern about light and being disturbed by the lights. A lot of places you can see them. It's nothing like the ones that you see at the Star Market across the street. Those are the latest of the latest that is out there, and they're not going to be any issue.
Okay. And also, I'm assuming that the pine trees will also will help in the sound buffer, because with the go-karts that are there now on You can hear them at night, and you can hear laughter, which is great. I mean, I enjoy hearing that, but you can hear it, and on a windy day, if the wind is blowing just right, it is really loud. And I'm assuming, obviously, the pine tree will be a buffer of that.
The pine trees will create a solid hedge because we're really packing them in, and we're starting with very large trees to begin with. So it'll be a solid evergreen hedge, and they grow quite quickly. They are the second fastest tree to the Leland cypress in terms of speed of growth.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else? Anyone else in the public like to speak?
So this vegetation, that's from Harold Street, if everybody can see that. None of this is getting touched.
Yep.
That's the triangle you mentioned.
Now you're gonna see also, as we get higher up in the air. By the way, I also took altitude screenshots. I'm happy to share that, but that's about 90 feet up in the air right now. This is what you see. And we're gonna be just in this corner right here, just in the corner. The farthest, none of the vegetation that you see is getting removed or disturbed.
Okay, and I do walk my dog over there, and I do see the stakes in the ground, so I know where the boundary is exactly.
Those are the old boundaries, I believe. We have not done anything new, but okay. Maybe Dan Croto will be more helpful to answer that. But I believe he hasn't been out there staking it.
Okay.
Correct, Swag. We haven't staked. We did find the bounds on the corners last fall, so you might be looking at our flagging from last fall. But okay. It is well bounded, and we certainly would be staking everything before any excavation happened.
Okay, thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if I might, if there's no more public comment, if I might be able to respond to some of the comments.
Well, before you do, I want to make sure we're done with the public, and then we'll let you address all of them, Attorney Singer. Anyone else out there in the public that's on the meeting that wants to speak to this petition? Mr. Hilliard, do you want to finish your questions?
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Okay. Attorney Singer, I guess you can go ahead and address the comments. Nobody else wants to speak, I guess.
Okay. I will be brief. I just wanted to address, I always, after doing this for so long, and Attorney Reed and Attorney Kroll are on here will probably agree, it is not often that we are presenting court cases to you and discussing them in depth. It is a unique, it happens every now and then, but not often. To that point, I would like to address a comment that Attorney Reed made, because he read you the statement that one of the court cases has ruled that contiguity, quote, contiguity of a parcel to a commercial zone that discourages residential use of a parcel in a residence zone does not, standing alone, establish hardship. He's correct. However, what he didn't read to you is from the Boyajian case that says, however, quote, close proximity of land zoned for residential purposes to a highly commercialized area is one factor which can be considered in concluding that a parcel of land is economically useless for the development of single-family residences, end quote. And so I believe the courts in the other cases we've talked about, Hines versus Broderick and Kavanaugh versus De Flumera, those also discuss where you have odd-shaped pieces of land that is has topographical features and or is in a location such as this where developing it for a use permitted by the bylaw is not economically feasible. So what we're asking you is not the fact that you could put a convenience store or a restaurant or a drugstore down in the commercial use. We're not trying to do that a false comparison. What we're saying is when you look at this odd-shaped portion of residential land on the rear of this property, because it's not even a separate lot, it's just a part of the property. When you look at it, when you look at the buffers, when you look at the access, when you look at the very active and Stuart mentioned it when she talked about Bud's go-karts. You know, the noise that will come from the go-karts. You know, when you look at where this is, the fact that it is near a commercial zone is exactly what the courts are talking about. And so I believe that this application does satisfy the hardship criteria, not just because of the floodplain issue, which absolutely is a soil condition, and the topography, but topography also is where the site's located, the slope of it, the wooded nature of parts of it, the access to it. When you take all of that in its entirety and you look at the court cases, I believe that the hardship is met for the justifiable conditions of the zoning bylaw. Thank you.
Okay, the public hearing part of it is still open, so anybody else want to say anything before I get a motion to close? No? I'll take a motion to close the public hearing from somebody.
So moved.
Second.
Who is that? Mr. Donahue, second?
Jim Hilliard moved.
Second, Mr. Hilliard. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, unanimous, the public hearing.
Mr. Dyer, could I stop for a minute? Who was the mover and who seconded?
Mr. Donahue made the motion and Mr. Hilliard seconded.
Thank you.
And then we had the 5 voting members, which would be me, Mr. Donahue, Mr. Armstrong, Mr. Murphy, Mr. Hilliard voted in favor of closing the public hearing. So discussion by the board, I'll kick off. I was in opposition to this proposal the last time around, but I have to say I found the cases in the zoning manual very helpful. And in looking at this property, I did raise the concern the last time whether it was feasible to put residential there. And the more I've looked at it, and especially in line with reading the cases, not just the manual, I went to a few of the cases, I really think this particular property does meet the requirement for a variance, because I think, as the couple of the cases said, it's really probably, in my opinion, not economically feasible to put residential in there because of all the issues, not just the proximity to the line of the 2 districts, but the fact that it is fairly commercially developed all around, and with the seasonal go-kart track there that's grandfathered, it's really not a very attractive location to put any kind of residential. And I've come around to my thinking, and I do think it meets the requirements for a variance in line with those different cases that were cited in the zoning manual. Mr. Donahue, and again, I know we had a lot of discussion last time about what a nice project it is, but that's not our job as a zoning board of appeals to decide the project is nice to approve it. That's up to the planning commission. We really need to look and see whether or not the legal requirements are met for the relief requested, in this case, a variance. I now believe that the applicant has met those requirements, and I think it's a good project anyway, but that's not why I'm in favor of it. I think they legitimately met the requirements in line with those cases that we looked at in the manual. Mr. Donahue.
If I recall going back to our first meeting, I think a comment was made that you have to put a zoning line somewhere, meaning that that property is commercial on one side and it is an RM zone on the other, residential. Because that line was thrown where it was, and it had to be done somewhere, as the chairman had said, I think the property as well would not be beneficial to being built upon. I know it's residential. It is a very odd piece of property, and that the current proposal I think would be in keeping with the benefit of the community. I know Mr. Breyer does not go that way, but I think it is extremely beneficial to the community as a whole. No further comment.
Mr. Hilliard.
First, I agree with the chairman's logic on this. I also believe there's compelling evidence that the elevation of the property, if one were to say we would put apartments or we would put residential in place of where the planned project is going to be, I think that goes beyond the pale as far as being economically viable. I don't think it's viable at all, which I think creates a much harder hardship. I don't see how anyone would want to build any kind of residential
Jim, we've lost your audio again, Jim.
Everyone should wave at him.
Yeah. Jim.
I'm sorry. He has to speak closer to the microphone. I think we were able to hear him. Jim?
Did you hear him?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm having a serious problem with the audio on for some reason. Did I not finish? What did I get cut off?
You didn't finish the last probably 4 or 5 sentences there.
Okay, well, let me just, for the sake of time, I believe we meet the criteria, both statutory and case law, for the issue of hardship. I don't believe the zoning issue is the important factor. I think the important factor is what is there now, almost negates the possibility of putting anything other there than something commercial, because where the golf course would go is immediately adjacent to commercial property, and I don't think it would ever be, could ever be utilized for that. For that reason, I'm in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan.
Actually, one question I have is, when was the zoning line determined, splitting that lot? Was it during the ownership of the property or before?
Attorney Singer.
I can try to address that. My knowledge is the zone line went in probably by the early 60s. But the current owners have had the property for 60 years. So I don't know exactly, who the owner was, but I think that line probably went in when zoning went in 60 years ago.
Okay. Thank you. I found also the cases that were presented by the attorney very helpful in determining that there's a good reason for granting this variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Armstrong.
I agree. I agree with the chairman. I think they met the criteria, and I'm in favor of it.
Mr. Murphy.
Yeah, I agree with the chairman on the fact that when this was originally proposed as 36 holes and where it was laid out was a weak plan. This change really puts a golf course in an area of that residential lot that truly is not buildable for a residential property. Couldn't imagine a residential area there, aside from the fact that it's surrounded on 2 sides by commercial. So this certainly seems to me to be the hardship is satisfied on that, and it's a good plan for the town.
Okay, thank you. Okay, before I make it, I'll make the motion because I have the stuff here in front of me. But I do think we need some conditions, which would be no surprise to Attorney Singer because I went through the list last time. And the bulk of them are simply taken right off your project benefits list. I just want to make them conditions. And Shayla, I can send this over to you tomorrow so you don't have to try to pick it up word for word. I'll scan it and send it over. But these would be the conditions, Attorney Singer. I'm looking at your project benefits list. The first one, I would simply change to say no storage of boats, vehicles, and trailers, as well as soil or other materials or anything not used in operation of your miniature golf business. I know that's not your intent, but I just would like to make that a condition since it's had a history of boat storage and whatnot. I would eliminate the next ones about the reduction. We don't need that. But your former 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, which would now be renumbered 2 through 8, just make all of those statements conditions. I would make a new 9 that would simply say all water areas to be aerated and or treated to maintain sanitary and visually acceptable conditions and to prevent algae growth. I don't think you folks would object to that. 10, no music on the site. You know, we've had a history of music complaints in town from outdoor music, so I don't see any need for that music there. 12, you're going to do it anyway, but all existing trees in the RM zone are to remain. 13, you'll promptly replace all trees or shrubs that die within 3 years after you open the course and thereafter maintain them, your plantings. Again, I don't think you'll object to that. You're going to do that anyway. And the last condition is normally we like to restrict property during construction or demolition during the summer season. You've got so much space there, I don't think that's necessary, but we would make it a condition that all the construction vehicles be parked on site at all times. We don't want any of them on Sisson or over on, what's the name of the side street there? You're now Harold Street. We don't want any on Harold either. Those would be the conditions. I think they're reasonable. I don't think your folks should have any problem with those.
Those are fine.
All right, well, I will make a motion then in case.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask one last question?
Yes.
I'm just curious with regard to the clientele, is there restrooms available currently?
Currently, there is no restrooms available to the public, but with the new proposal, we're going to have restrooms. And they would be handicap accessible as well as the miniature 50% would be accessible, which would be great improvement. And I think that makes it even, better
There will be restrooms.
There will be restrooms as part of the proposal.
All right, thank you.
I did not put a condition in on food service when I was reviewing the case again for this meeting. I thought about it some more, and I don't know what my objection the last time was to food service, but I don't really see that that's an issue. Okay, so I will move in case 2020-8.
I think Mr. Sullivan has his hand up.
Yeah, just one question. It has been addressed. The part of the site that still has the sand mounds and so forth is not going to be developed. Part of it's where the trailers are, but north of the trailers. Is there any opportunity of making sure the areas get graded properly so they don't look as unsightly as they do now? Anything put down to just beautify it a little bit? Just throwing it out there. On the areas that are not going to be disturbed for the golf course.
Shannon, are you going to answer that question?
Yeah, we'll be smooth.
Landscape plan. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So we'll be smoothing it, grading it, and it's going to be gorgeous. It's going to be really natural and smooth and nice. That's just something we would do naturally.
Okay.
We're concerned about aesthetics. Yeah.
Okay, any more comments or questions? Okay, I will move that in case 2020-18, Attorney Hall, successor trustee of the MLS Hall Realty Trust, to his agent, Attorney Andrew Singer, be granted a variance from the provisions of Section 325-9 in Table 1 of the zoning bylaw in order to develop a previously disturbed and commercially used portion of property located in 2 zoning districts in connection with a seasonal miniature golf course. The application is pursuant to the Code of the Town of Harwich, Section 325-52, and Table 1 use regulations that set forth in MGL, Chapter 40A, Section 10. The property is located at 346 Route 28 in 0 Sisson Road, Map 21, parcels N2-0 and N1-0, in the CH1 and RM zoning districts, subject to the conditions that I previously read, and I guess, I don't know, do I need to read them again into the record as conditions to the permit? I guess I will. 1, no storage of boats, vehicles, and trailers, as well as soil or other materials or anything not used in the operation of miniature golf business will be put on the site at any time. 2, all parking access and drainage will be located within the commercial zone. 3, 67% of the miniature golf business, including parking, will be located in the commercial zone. 4, replacement for the use will be seasonal to follow Bud's go-karts season, which will be June, July, August, 7 days per week, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. weather permitting, and off-season in the shoulder months, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. any day weather permitting. 5, the flood zone located at the front of the property along the road will be protected, and enhanced and upgraded stormwater management will be provided. 6, the vegetated and forested buffers along Sisson Road, Harold Street, and to the rear of butters will be expanded and enhanced, and they will be fully shielded in dark sky compliant lighting. And I'll just add as an aside, the zoning code has a section on required lighting that the applicant has to meet in any event. 7, access will be improved with 2 curb cuts on Sisson Road, and the existing curb cut on Harold Street will be shut and closed, both for safety and for traffic flow purposes. 8, there will be compliance with all dimensional setback, building coverage, and site coverage requirements under the zoning bylaw. 9, all water areas on the golf course will be aerated and or treated to maintain sanitary and visually acceptable conditions and to prevent algae growth. 10, there will be no music on the site. 12, all existing trees in the RM zone will remain. 13, the applicant will promptly replace all trees or shrubs that die within 3 years after opening, and thereafter maintain all plantings. And 15, all construction vehicles will be parked on site at all times and not on Sisson or on Harold Street. Do I have a second for that motion, please?
Second.
Second, Mr. Murphy. Okay, we're going to vote by, we should vote by roll, I guess. Okay, I'll call myself first. I'll vote in favor. Yes, Mr. Donahue?
I'm in favor.
Yes. Mr. Armstrong?
I'm in favor.
Yes. Mr. Hilliard?
In favor.
Yes. Okay, and Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Okay, motion passed, variance granted.
Thank you very much for all of your time. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Mr. Chairman, Dave, Jim Hilliard here. I am having a problem. My audio is on and off and on and off. I think in fairness to the next two cases that I have to just basically withdraw from the hearing because I'm missing something, and obviously I'm missing my comments until I get this resolved.
Okay, well, if you just sit out the next two or drop off, we still have 5 members for the next two cases.
Okay, good. Thank you so much, and I apologize. I don't know what the problem is, but I'll get it fixed.
Okay, but you might want to stay around because we do need to have a reorganization after the cases. This is June.
Oh, yeah, I just may not be able to hear you. That's the problem. I have to keep redialing in. So, but I'll stick around. If I can't get it fixed, I'm going to have to just drop out.
Okay. Okay. Case 2020-19, Stephen T. McSweeney, trustee of the McSweeney Family Realty Trust, through his agent, Attorney Williams, has applied for a special permit to demolish and replace a pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling. The application is pursuant to the Code of the Town of Harwich, Section 325, Table 2, Area Regulations. It's set forth at MGL Chapter 40A, Section 6. The property is located at 12 Seabreeze Avenue, map 6B, parcel E1-10 in the RH2 zoning district. Just one moment, Attorney Crowell. One matter on the last case, case 2020-18. Shayla, Ms. Delaney, I authorize you to stamp all of the plans and specifications and documents and to sign the decision on my behalf when it's ready.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Attorney Crowell, sorry.
It's all right, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Attorney William Crowell from Harwichport. Everyone can hear me all right?
Yep.
I also have, you'll see Steve McSweeney is on the screen. He is the trustee that's the owner of the property. So he's dialed in. The property is on Seabreeze Avenue. As per the plot plans that were submitted with the petition, and I will attempt to be brief on this hearing and the next one, as you've had a long evening already. I think the issues are pretty straightforward on both matters. In this case, the petitioner is seeking a special permit to demolish and replace the existing non-conforming single-family residence at 12 Seabreeze Avenue. You have the existing conditions plan by Moran Engineering as well as the proposed conditions plan. And you can see that basically the new dwelling is going to sit in the same location as the existing dwelling. The difference is that when you look at the existing conditions plan, that the existing house is 8.2 feet from the southerly lot line and 5.8 feet from Seabreeze Avenue on the east. Those are going to get better because we're stepping back on the southerly lot line to 10 feet. So we're becoming more conforming. And from Seabreeze, we're going to 10.7 feet, again, becoming more conforming. And I know the board likes to see that. The building coverage is presently at 26.2%. That will increase to the maximum in that zone, in the RH2 zone of 30%. So we're still within the bylaw. The site coverage is already non-conforming at 37.2%. It's beyond already a little bit beyond the 35% maximum, and we're looking to increase that somewhat to 43.5%. So that with the new dwelling, we would have the increase in the site coverage. We would also have a slight increase in the habitable space on the northeast side of the dwelling closer to dwelling closest to Seabreeze Avenue. You can see on the proposed conditions plot plan, the little hash marked, which is the existing dwelling. So we're creating a little bit more habitable space, just that sliver where it says 18.3, just a few square feet of habitable space closer than 20 feet to the lot line. So we're creating a little bit more habitable space, just a sliver there. So those two increases constitute an intensification of an existing nonconformity, which, as you know, under the Gale case is allowed by this board by special permit. Also, just as a point of information, the applicant is sacrificing one bedroom in the new house, as there is a bedroom in the cottage. So the septic system is a 5-bedroom capacity. So with the sacrificing of one bedroom in the main house and having one in the cottage, it still would be keeping the Board of Health happy, that it would be a 5-bedroom septic. We have the denial letter I filed from the building commissioner, the denial letter, so-called, where he points out that we would need a special permit in this case. There's also a letter that you should have received from the direct abutter to the north, Ms. Bethany Craig. Did the chairman receive that, or did the clerk receive that letter?
I did not receive it.
Okay.
I don't think so.
All right. It's not very long. If I could read it, I would like to.
Okay.
All right. It's from Bethany Craig and it's to Ms. Delaney and the board members. As the immediate abutter to 12 Seabreeze Avenue, I would like to express to you my happy anticipation of having Jane and Stephen McSweeney as my year-round neighbors. I have lived at 16 Seabreeze Avenue for 3 decades now, all that time with McSweeney's as summer neighbors, and I could not wish for anyone I would be happier to have nearby year-round. Steve has shared with me the plans and elevations they are working on to replace the current, sadly ancient structure, which is simply not able to be fixed. Over the years, my late husband and I have written many letters to this board in support of summer neighbors choosing to move here full-time, and no design has been more in keeping with the tone and history of the neighborhood than this the McSweeneys are proposing. Considering that the inside is modern and convenient, I believe the architect could not have done a better job of keeping the outside appearance on all elevations looking like something that has always been there. I urge you to approve of this plan, which can only add value to this little neighborhood without detracting in any way. Very sincerely, Bethany H. Craig, C-R-A-I-G. Wanted to read it because it's one of my better letters of support. Also, the petitioner has previously been to the Historic Commission, and they have approved. The Historic Commission has approved of this demolition and replace, again because he's in keeping with the streetscape. So the contention this evening is simply that the board, asking that the board grant the special permit, that there would be no substantial increase in noise, traffic, odors, congestion, or the like, and there would be no substantial detriment to the entire neighborhood if this demolition and replacement took place. And we would ask that you grant the special permit this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Crowell. Mr. Donahue.
Standing and non-conformity in the structure.
I didn't hear the question.
Is a non-conformity, the property is non-conforming already.
Yes, correct.
Given the shifting of the property, is the non-conforming currently being increased?
Yes, because we are increasing the presently non-conforming site coverage from 37.2% to 43.5%. In keeping with the Gale case, we're intensifying the nonconformity and we're adding a sliver of new habitable space closer than 25 feet to Seabreeze Avenue on the northeast side.
I think, and I may stand corrected, so I'll give this to the chairman, this requires a variance, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't think so, because all they're doing is increasing the existing nonconformity on site coverage.
May I read something that was sent out with regard to this?
Okay.
Okay, here is an opinion of the council with regard to question extending already non-conforming line to a point where it creates another non-conformity. Council, this is what we had received. Case requires applicant to obtain a variance for the new non-conformity. We had been following the approach until this particular case where we granted a special permit for the new non-conformity. We will go back to this approach in the future cases and require variance for any new nonconformity.
This is not a new nonconformity.
It's extending a nonconformity, which makes a new nonconformity.
Yeah, it's an extension of an existing nonconformity, an intensification.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, when you want.
It would be a new nonconformity if, for example, where they conform on the west side, they wanted to go within the 20-foot setback over there. That would be a new nonconformity. But they're still meeting that 20-foot setback on the west. What they're doing is increasing the existing site coverage nonconformity. So they're merely intensifying an existing nonconformity, not creating a new one. A new one would require a variance. You're absolutely right. I'm sorry, Attorney Crowell, did you want to say something too?
Yes, thank you. And I don't know what Mr. Donahue was reading from, who wrote that or on whose behalf or whatever, but clearly the Gale case that we've been going with as the law for the last 8 or 9 years says that you can expand an existing nonconformity. Then that was from the appeals court. The same appeals court 2 years later with the Dedrick case from Chatham said, well, we were a little bit too liberal on that. We're going to retract it somewhat, and you cannot create a new nonconformity, just as the chairman just stated. If on the west side, you're already 25 feet from Windermere Bluffs Road, and you wanted to go to 22 feet, we could not do that without a variance. But the Gale case remains a special permit situation when you're intensifying an existing nonconformity. So where we have an already nonconforming site coverage at 37.2 when the maximum was 35%, then with the Gale case, we can intensify that with a special permit. So
thank you. Just for clarification, that is from Dedrick and not Gale.
Yes, I think you were reading from something related to the Dedrick case, yes.
It was.
Yeah, we have had that situation in the past, Al, where, gosh, it was before you were on the board, a long time ago, I don't remember the specifics, but they were going to intensify, and it might have been Attorney Crowell's case, intensify on one side, but they were going to create a new violation on one of the other sides, and we said no go under special permit. You would have to get a variance for that side. And I think you came back in with amended plans.
That was not my case, because I know the board had previously held that, unlike some towns interpret the Gale case to say if you're non-conforming on the east, then that can be applied to the west and the north and the south. But Harwich, you folks have consistently said, no, it's got to be on that side. I think it was either, it may have been Attorney Ford that had that, because they do allow that in Barnstable, and I think he was kind of firing out a test flare to see if you folks would go for it, and you didn't.
No, yeah, we have consistently taken that position. Al, anything further?
Nothing further.
Okay, Brian?
Hey, thank you. Just to confirm, so the existing cottage, that's going to be taken down?
No, existing cottage remains, just the main house.
All right. No, I've been by the property, of course, and I think the new construction is going to basically improve the neighborhood and be right in line with everything I've seen in that street.
Okay, Mr. Armstrong.
No questions.
Mr. Murphy.
Yeah, apologize. I fell off there for a second. Back now, though. Yeah, I have no questions. It's certainly what's being proposed is in line with what's already in that neighborhood. So no concerns, no questions.
Yeah, I think it meets the requirements of the bylaw on the Gale case because, as I said, they're simply intensifying a pre-existing nonconformity, not creating a new one, and it's certainly not going to be more substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing nonconformity. We will need the construction condition on there, Attorney Crowell. That's pretty tight down there. I was down the other day and a lot of people already walking around on the streets, and I think we'll have to have that condition.
Yeah, that there's no problem with that. The way the timing works out, the governor still has to lift he's still got the pause button on the appeal period running anyway. But by the time you file your decision and the 20-day appeal period expires, et cetera, my client does not have immediate plans to build in August, even if he could. So the fall after Labor Day is fine.
Okay. All right. Anybody else want to make the motion? Otherwise, I'll just make it. Well, oh, wait, I'm sorry. Is there anybody in the public wanting to comment on this case? I don't think anybody is out there. I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Somebody? Okay, I'm sorry. I misphrased that. Yeah, I make the motion. Okay, who seconded?
Al.
Al, I think. Okay. I'll move in case 2020-19, Stephen T. McSweeney, trustee, the McSweeney Family Realty Trust, through his agent, Attorney William Crowell, be granted a special permit to demolish and replace a pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling. The application is pursuant to the Code of the Town of Harwich, Section 325, Table 2, Area Regulations, as set forth in MGL Chapter 40A, Section 6. The property is located at 12 Seabreeze Avenue, Map 6B, Parcel E1-10 in the RH2 zoning district, subject to the condition that there will be no substantial demolition, external construction, or new substantial landscaping in any year during the period from June 30 to Labor Day. Would I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, second, Mr. Murphy. All in favor, Mr. Donahue?
Aye.
Mr. Sullivan?
Aye.
Mr. Armstrong?
Aye.
Murphy?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. So unanimous, special permit granted.
Thank you very much.
Hey, you're welcome.
Thank you for coming in. Good luck, Mr. McSweeney.
Mr. Ryer, are you authorizing me?
Yes, I forgot. Yes, I authorize you to stamp all the applicable plans and submissions. So to sign the the decision on my behalf, Ms. Delaney. Okay.
Thank you.
Case 320-20, Ruth Brophy, Lawrence Brophy, and Kerry Brophy, through their agent, Attorney William Crowell, have applied for a special permit to construct 2 additions onto a pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling. The application is pursuant to the Code of the Town of Harwich, Section 325, Table 2, Area Regulations, and 325-54A2, it's set forth in MGL Chapter 40A, Section 6. Property is located at 13 Gordon Road, Map 5, Parcel B4-8, in the RH1 zoning. Okay, Attorney Crowell, you may present this case also.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney William Crowell again from Harwich Port, and I have listening in Kerry Brophy on the screen now. Can't see what baseball hat she has on, but it doesn't look like Red Sox. Doesn't matter this year. In any event, unfortunately. This property is located south of Lower County on Gorham Road in West Harwich. And we submitted with the petition for the special permit, again, an existing conditions plan and a proposed conditions plan by Moran Engineering. Dan Croto, who's listening in and was listening in on the prior petition. What's being proposed, as you can see from the existing conditions plot plan, is to remove an existing patio on the northeast side and construct the addition there, as well as a proposed addition on the southeasterly side, as shown on the plan. And you can see the distances from the lot line on the northeast side where the master bedroom addition is going. It's currently I want to get the distance right. It's currently 16.1, and we'd be going to the northeast corner of the new addition, going to 15.6. So getting a little bit closer, which would be an intensification of an existing nonconformity, because we're supposed to be 12 feet under the current bylaw from the easterly sideline. And then on the southerly sideline, we would remain at 17.7, but since we're creating new habitable space there within 20 feet of the easterly lot line, that would constitute an intensification because we are creating that new habitable space. So we're asking for relief for both of those additions in accordance with the Gale case, because we're coming a little bit closer to the lot line on the northeast side and creating habitable space there within the 20 feet. And then on the southeast side, even though we're not coming closer, we're creating new habitable space with that addition as well. Consequently, again, in accordance with the findings of the Gale case, we're seeking to intensify existing nonconformities. We submitted building and elevation plans. We have the denial letter as part of the petition from the building inspector saying that we have to come to you for relief in the form of a special permit. And we would ask that the board grant a special permit on the grounds that there would be no substantial increase in noise, traffic, odors, fumes, congestions, or the like, and that there would be no substantial detriment to the neighborhood, as a result of these two additions. And we would ask that you grant the petition this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Donahue.
I have no questions.
Mr. Sullivan.
I have no questions either.
Mr. Armstrong.
No questions.
Mr. Murphy.
No questions.
And I have no questions, but a comment that, again, I think we'd need the construction restriction. Seemed like it was kind of tight in there. I don't know, unless you could get the construction vehicles all onto the property.
We have no problem with doing this after Labor Day, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any comments from the public? Hearing none, I'll move that we close the public hearing.
So moved.
Okay, second by Mr. Donahue. I think this case, very similar to the last one from a legal perspective, meets the bylaw, meets the Gale case, simply an intensification of some pre-existing nonconformities, and there will be no detriment to the neighborhood. No substantial, it will not be substantially more detrimental than the existing nonconformities. So I will, unless there's, do we have any discussion by the board? No, hearing none, I'll move that in case 2020-20, Ruth Brophy, Lawrence Brophy, and Kerry Brophy, through their agent, attorney William Crowell, be granted a special permit to construct two additions onto the pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling. The application is pursuant to the Code of the Town of Harwich, Section 325, Table 2, Area Regulations, and 325-54A2, which sets forth in MGL Chapter 40A, Section 6. The property is located at 13 Gordon Road, Map 5, Parcel B4-8 in the RH1 zoning district, subject to the condition that there will be no substantial demolition, external construction, or new landscaping in any year during the period from June 30 through Labor Day. Do I have a second on my motion?
Second.
Second for Mr. Sullivan. Any discussion by the board? Okay, I'll vote in favor. Yes, Mr. Donahue.
I vote in favor. Yes.
Yes, Mr. Armstrong.
Yes.
Mr. Murphy.
Vote yes.
Mr. Sullivan.
Yes.
Right. Motion carries unanimously. Special permit is granted. I authorize.
Excuse me, Mr. Ryan, did you vote in favor also on that for the record?
I led off. Sorry.
You did. Thank you.
And I authorize Ms. Delaney to stamp all of the plans, specifications, drawings, and to sign the decision when it's ready. And that is it on the substantive cases.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Welcome, Bill.
Enjoy, Kerry.
Okay, we have 3 sets of minutes. First one is from our April 29th meeting at 1 p.m. Did anybody have any comments on those minutes?
No.
Comments? I'll move that those minutes be approved as written. Could I have
I'll
a second?
second that.
Second for Mr. Armstrong. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
But a few more ayes.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
All right. Okay, the April 20, it's getting late. Yeah, April 29, 2020 meeting at 7 p.m. I do have a couple of comments on that. Kayla, on the first page, we're down second, I guess, paragraph from the bottom there. Mr. Ryer noted that in his association with Meals on Wheels, he had come to know a member of the condo association, but doesn't, instead of know her well, could we put in regularly socialize with her? I think that's what I said. Okay, on the next page, the third paragraph down starts out Ms. Muller. In the third line there, portion of the lot is limited by the floodplain and the rising slope of the land. Just need an E on there. The E got dropped. Hold on 1 second. 2, 3, 4, 5 pages back. I guess it's the 5th paragraph down. It says, Mr. Ryer said that he thought that the project met the requirements of the Gale case, and it says bylaws. It should be one, just capital B, by law. And at the bottom of that second page, third line from the bottom, disability and needs, not and open air, but and, just that D needs to come off. Okay, with those minor changes, I'll move that the minutes from the April 29, 2020, 7 p.m. meeting be approved. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Donahue, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Shayla, not to be nitpicking, you did a great job on those minutes, but I actually read those, so I picked those up.
No worries. I appreciate anybody who wants to make any, believe me, this was very tough this month. But if you could send me, you were going to send me something already.
Send you the conditions tomorrow.
And if you have any way, the last one that you said, I'm not sure I'm going to find that. It was on page 5, third line from the bottom.
Oh, you know what? I'll just fax the pages.
Great, thank you.
And on the same, on May 27th minutes, I have one change, and I'll fax it to you, but I'll just let the board members know. It said, Mr. Ryer, it's on page 2, third from the last paragraph. Mr. Ryer said that he had spoken with Don Howell, who is now the liaison for the Board of Selectmen, about interviewing all of the alternates. That's not actually what happened. I did speak with him. He's the liaison, period, but Mr. Howell said he wants to interview all of the alternates. So we'll make one change. With that change, I would move that we approve the minutes of the May 27th, 2020 meeting. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Murphy, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, minutes approved. The other thing we were supposed to do tonight, but Mr. Hilliard is gone, is to reorganize, which means we need to choose a chairman and a clerk for the coming year. So the candidates would be Mr. Armstrong, Mr. Donahue, me, and Mr. Hilliard. There's only 4 of us at the moment. Al, Jamie, you guys want to be the chair or the clerk?
Congratulations, Dave.
This is the last year I'm going to do it, though.
I think everybody step back on you, Dave.
It's no work at all. Yeah. It's actually a fair amount of work, and this is what, the 4th or 5th year I've done it now. But all right, I will be willing to do it. But you guys, if you change your mind, I'll talk to Jim, but I know he won't do it because he's still working. I have not heard anything from Don Howell. I don't know what's happening. I don't know. Before the next meeting, I will contact him and see what's going on. But he, I don't know, he's a new liaison, so I don't know how he wants to do it. I think I had mentioned I had recommended Mike Capoli, who seems to have disappeared. He hasn't been here the last few meetings, but anyway, we'll see what Mr. Howell decides. And everybody's better still be cautious with this virus. I'm afraid we're going to see cases spiking here now, because boy, we went up to Wellfleet, I forget, Friday last, I think, and all along, you know, that strip through Orleans and Eastham, the restaurants, the gas stations, people without masks, and they're eating outside, but nobody's got a mask, and pretty doggone close. There's always a breeze up here. So I think it's not just going to be the South and the West that start seeing increased cases. I think we'll see them here too, I'm afraid. So be careful. That's all I've got. Anyone else have anything? Shayla,
I just
thanks
have a
much.
comment, Dave, I have a comment for you. The golf balls don't work very well.
Well, they didn't work for me either, Al, if you remember. They
Got
never
into
worked.
meeting.
Okay, Shayla, thanks for the great job on those minutes. That was a lot of typing. So appreciate it, yeah.
Welcome.
Okay, with that, I will move to close the meeting. Do we have a second? Mr. Armstrong's ready to, oh, Mr. Sullivan, okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Meeting closed at 9:06